our parents and our grandparents, they saw their doctors as the only resource. And I hope anyone listening that still thinks like that knows that. So your doctor gets maybe 2 weeks of nutrition, maybe. We are the only species in the world that looks to someone else to tell us what to eat. And there's like over 8 million species. So clearly, like, we have lost our way. The outside of the meat starts to get those black marks.
Yeah.
Well, those black marks are carcinogenic. Like, those are the things that you don't want.
You didn't know that?
They're really bad for you.
I'm sorry, what? Welcome to Under the Sun podcast. I'm Ilea.
And I'm Irene. Grab a cup of coffee and your comfiest sweats and join us every Monday as two best friends discuss everything from raising free-range gremlins to business and really everything under the sun.
Let's get started, and thanks for being here.
Hey guys, welcome to today's episode. We are so excited for today's interview. James, would you mind introducing yourself? Tell us who you are and what you do.
Yeah, I've been a professional chef for, 20 years now. And I started out cooking for a bunch of celebs. I'll drop a few names since people love that. Tom Cruise, Gerard Butler, Sean Puffy Combs, who's in the news these days.
Yep.
I did not see anything. I just want to say that. And then a bunch of others like George Clooney and Barbara Streisand briefly, and John Cusack. I mean, I served a lot of people in that community for a long time.
That's awesome.
And ultimately, though, was looking to kind of support more of the 99%. I mean, I think the 1% are great and it's great stories, but I'm kind of here on this earth to try to help as many people as I can. So I left very cushy jobs to start a business. And initially it was a meal delivery service. And then once I did that and kind of almost killed myself, I then took a break, was a stay-at-home dad. So I could definitely talk about that.
Yeah.
And then I got the idea for Pluck, which is an organ-based seasoning. It's really kind of like the original superfood. It's Mother Nature's multivitamin, and it's just a super easy, super delicious way to get organ meats into yours and your family's diet. Is easy as salting your food. And I am just, and then I'm a cookbook author as well. I've co-authored and authored a few cookbooks. One's called the Naked Foods Cookbook. I did the recipes in Margaret Floyd's Eat Naked book and Dr. Alejandro Younger's most recent book called Clean 7.
That's awesome. Wow. So have you always been a clean chef, or has that evolved over the last 20 years of you being a chef? Like in the sense of organ meats, and also your website is basically my dream of no sugars, no natural flavors, all the things, no gluten, no additives, which is stuff that a lot of people like us, I didn't think used to be bad. And then now I'm I just don't buy those ingredients anymore. Have you always been a chef who has been nope, I won't do any additives, or did that evolve for you?
Yeah, it is funny. I mean, a lot of the things that are becoming very popular right now, I was doing 20 years ago.
Okay. Yeah.
So there is an aspect of this is only now just becoming a thing. We've been doing it forever. And then it's funny because there is such an evolution, I was into sprouting and to culturing and to a lot of traditional foods way back in the day. And just like anyone, human nature kind of comes into play. And it's the thing that you're hot on one moment is the thing you're not hot on the next moment. It's not that I don't value these things, but I used to do it all, DIY. I used to make it from scratch. And now I just go out and buy it. I don't take the time to do it as much. I still eat very cleanly, but I just kind of spend my time differently. But in general, there's definitely been an evolution. I got into cooking in my 30s. So I was not just out of high school. I mean, I was much older, obviously when I went in. And so I took it really seriously. I knew exactly what I wanted from it. I truly wanted to understand health through food. Mm-hmm. And I didn't want to work in a restaurant. That's why I got tied into the celebrity scene, because I knew that I wanted to work one-on-one with people. Mm-hmm. And it was really just a process of Well, I mean, I guess I had always knew that I wanted to kind of make sure that the cooking was the most optimal food. So, like a lot of chefs talk about food in general. Like when I first became a chef, I think what was healthy was grilled chicken breasts, steamed vegetables, and like a baked potato.
Yeah.
And that was what everyone thought was as healthy. They kind of saw food as like what makes it healthy is you scale it back and you just keep it really simple. But I was always the belief of like, no, like that doesn't seem right. And then so I went to a school that really emphasized that, no, you got to more think about sourcing. You got to think about how you cook the food. Like, are you soaking those grains before you cook them? There's a professor of archaeology named Bill Schindler, Dr. Bill Schindler. So he wrote a book called Eat Like a Human. And he's a friend. And I bring him up a lot because he is one of the few people that talks about food the way I do, which is it's not as important as it is how.
Okay.
Like how, like, so for example, a lot of influencers right now are talking about how bad vegetables are, right?
Yeah.
Right.
But it's like most of us have grown up our entire lives being told like, no, get your vegetables and eat your vegetables. And it's like, yeah, vegetables have lectins. Yes, there's things in them that are not necessarily conducive. And same with grains, right? But that doesn't mean you have to throw it out the baby with the bathwater.
Yeah, right.
It's just, you just have to more think about, well, how are you preparing these things? So if it's a grain and you pre-soak it, you're going to make it more digestible. You're going to lower the chemicals that are preventing you from getting nutrition from it. You're going to basically release those chemicals and open the seed up as though it thinks it's being put in the ground. So it's going to basically release those toxins and make it so that you can not only eat it and digest it well, but actually benefit from it. Mm-hmm. So we took something that doesn't have a lot of benefit and created benefit, and it was how we did it. We soaked it, maybe even sprouted it, and then cooked it.
So for the listeners that like don't know anything about sprouting, can you give a brief, like, how do you sprout it? Do you leave it soaking for an hour or for 3 days?
Yeah, I mean, it varies on what we're talking about. So if you think about, there's culturing, there's sprouting, there's fermenting, and they're all the same concept, but you're just doing something different. And sometimes you're even using different bacteria to do it. But with sprouting grains, for example, you want to just soak them in water. So you would stick the grains in a bowl, stainless steel or glass, not plastic, and you would cover it with water, and you can even add some whey to it to help promote the soaking even more. You can even put salt in the water a little bit before to help it, but you don't have to. Mm-hmm. And you just basically cover it, leave it out on your countertop for, could be 24 hours, depending on what it is. If it's cashews, you don't want to go 24 hours to get really mushy. Mm-hmm. But if it's a grain, 24 hours is fine. Okay. And then from there, you create an environment to sprout it. So you might put it in a mason jar and have it tipped so that any liquid can kind of have like a screen on it, so like natural bacteria in the air can get in, but then liquid doesn't get stuck at the bottom and can actually drip out, because you don't want it to get moldy. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But and that's just literally like a 3-day process. And then you'll start to see the grains. Sometimes you'll see a little kind of sperm I think it's called endosperm. You'll sort of see that happening, but you don't even have to wait for that. Just a few days of just letting it kind of air, but also and sprout. You'll immediately unlock all the nutrition that's in that grain or seed.
I love it. So here's my, I guess, a twofold question, because we're talking about these different ways of sprouting and fermenting, all the things. When it comes to like beans, because beans and legumes freaking confuse me. I ferment my own sauerkraut, and I did sourdough for a long time until it hurt my stomach. But with beans, how long do you have to soak the beans? And also, there's like a lot of conversation out there that like, oh, that's unnecessary to do that at all. Like, do you find that it is necessary to soak legumes and beans like every time? And is it coming from a bag that is fresh beans, or is it cans? Like, do you have to soak your cans, or is it like cans are already soaked, right? That's kind of a
I mean, well,
complicated.
yeah, if it's in a can, it's already been cooked. So that you wouldn't do anything to.
Okay.
The beans you don't necessarily need to soak. You do want to rinse them though, because and same with legumes. Soaking. So when you think of it, it's already been completely dried out.
Mm-hmm.
So what you're doing when you're rehydrating the bean or the legume, and so technically, and since they're also cooking in water, and it's usually a much longer cook than a grain, right? Yeah. And it's slower, and so that environment right there is going to support the kind of the bean kind of being more bioavailable.
Okay.
But there's things what you need to be more concerned with beans. So a lot of times we rinse them first to make sure there's no like rocks or pebbles in them.
Right.
But then the thing that you got to be worried about more is that flatulence, like how they just kind of can give you a upset stomach, so that you can add things to the bean. Like one thing that you add is kombu, like a seaweed. And it's very easy to find, but it's a seaweed will kind of support not only the digestibility, but will even sometimes support it not being as causing as much flatulence.
Yeah. Have you always been healthy? Like a healthy, or where did this come from? Like, where did your passion for food, bioavailability, sourcing, like where did that come from?
I think the word or the way that I've come to learn how to talk about any change that happens in our lives is contrast, So I think a lot of times we only know something until we're taught something new, right? So and that can go from your wealth to certain rituals, certain things you do. Like unless you have like think about weddings, right? People, if you've never had a wedding or never gone to a wedding, the only one you think about is the one you've either seen in the movies or the one you dream about in your head. Yeah. But once we go to a wedding, then we're like, okay, now I know I do want this and I don't want that. We get really specific, right? Well, I believe the same thing happens with your diet. It's like if something is not blatantly clear to you, like I'm getting rashes from what I'm eating or whatever is going on, then you kind of have no reason to change. And so for me, I grew up in a household that was really not a foodie household at all, was not necessarily a healthy household, but it wasn't that it was unhealthy. It's just, they didn't know any better. Like, like we ate Wonder Bread until Time Magazine did an article on whole wheat bread. And then my mom read it and was like, oh, okay, well, now we'll switch to whole wheat. So she was just going with the times, what they thought was healthy then. Cereals, whatever. Okay, well, let's try to limit the sugar in the cereal, but we'll still have cereal. So instead of Frosted Flakes, it's going to be Cheerios, or whatever. It's like the knowledge was so basic and limited. And my mom was getting most of her knowledge from those media magazines like Time and People and all that, right? So not a lot of nutritional kind of background in my family. But I believe that it was that contrast that inspired me of like, oh, like what else is out there? Like, because we didn't make anything from scratch. Everything was store-bought. Vegetables were frozen. And then I think, when I got into, I had just graduated from college, and I was at I was in theater at the time. And so I was doing this theater company in Williamstown, Massachusetts. I grew up on the West Coast. So I was like, 3,000 miles away from home. And I got a kidney stone. And that, for anyone that doesn't know, is probably the closest a man can get to having a baby. And it's the pain of having a baby. And it's still not as close, but it's incredibly painful. And it was one of those things of like, the minute it passed, I was like, why did I get this and how do I prevent it?
Yeah.
And luckily the doctor said, well, what have you been eating and drinking? If he had not equated, like if he had not connected the dots of like, oh, you got this because of what you're eating or drinking, I don't think I would have realized that what I ate affected my health.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know. I was in my early 20s and I did not know that.
Yeah.
Which is funny to think about nowadays because we're so much more keen to that stuff. But I don't know. I mean, I still meet people in their 40s that just go like a health ailment comes up and they're like, I got to go to the doctor. I'm like, well, maybe you should first look at what you're eating.
Yeah.
Or the environment you're in. You know what I mean? Like a lot of people don't connect those dots.
Yeah.
I mean, and a lot of times, but doctors don't usually connect those dots either, because there's been many times, like I always told the story of, I turned 18 and I was like, oh, I guess like I'm an adult now and I should like go to like the OBGYN and like whatever. And she's like, oh, you have some, a hormonal imbalance, some acne, here's some birth control. And I was like, well, is there anything I can eat to like change? And I don't know where that came from, because we also just grew up on like mac and cheese and canned peas. Like which is, my parents did the best they could with what they had. But she was like, no, whatever you're eating doesn't change any outcome. It's just, here's this medication. And I'm like, that is the story for a lot of women, who are listening to our podcast. So what a blessing that that doctor was like, hey, here's this little seed, and now it's sprouted into like who you are now as a person.
Yeah, no, it definitely started. I mean, from that day forward, I never left anywhere without water. Like I started to carry water around everywhere. I mean, I think what you're saying is so true. Like this, our parents and our grandparents, they saw their doctors as the only resource. I was talking with someone the other day and they were like, oh, remember pre-internet, like how Encyclopedia Britannica was like the thing of how people got information. And you would go to people's houses, and depending on how many because they sold them per book. And so a really wealthy household would have like all of them. And then others might only have one or two or three. And he was like reminding me of how like that was your internet. Like you would see those and you just start scouring them for information. And it's like, so we come from this period where people saw their doctors as having all the information. And I hope anyone listening that still thinks like that knows that. So your doctor gets maybe 2 weeks of nutrition, maybe. Like they're so overwhelmed. They get certain training, of course, depending on what their type of medicine they study is. So like if it's surgery, they're obviously getting surgical experience.
I was on the hunt for a coloring book or just activities for the fall for my kid.
Cute little pumpkins.
Yes.
Cute little spiders.
Yeah. And everything I found, in particular, I was looking for a coloring book for my kid to color in, and all of them had witches, ghosts. I'm not terribly opposed to mummies, but like they were all scary. And we were in Joanne Fabrics and she saw a ghost that was scary, and she talked about it for 2 weeks. She was like, ghost, you keep me safe? I'm like, yes, I'll keep you safe. I'm like, I know other parents are feeling like this. So I created my own freaking coloring book. And I'm sponsoring our own episode. So if you want to buy it, I'll pop up a picture here because I actually gave all my promos out to like her and our friend Taylor. And it's all happy fall things. So like little cute spiders, and it's all happy eyes and acorns, scarecrows, like a whole bunch of cute things. And it's all paired with Bible verses, one Bible verse per page. And you can color in the Bible verse. What'd your kids think?
They loved it. They think they love cute things. And the bigger the eyeballs, the cuter they are.
What I'm going to do is now for every single holiday, I'm going to make a Christian version of coloring books, and they're just going to get cuter and cuter because this is my first time doing this.
I love it.
If you want,
it's so adorable.
If you want to support, we'll put a link in the description. We would love for you to order it and like send me pictures of your kids coloring with it. That's the greatest joy.
Yeah.
So, that's it.
That's our ad.
That's my promotion for myself.
I love it.
So I'm not saying they're not at all qualified to do it. They're to be a doctor, but they're not necessarily qualified to support your nutrition.
Right.
Yeah.
And the reality is then you question, well, what are they qualified for, or what should I go to a doctor for? Well, that's the question and that's what you got to figure out for yourself. But like, I'll tell you this much, that a lot of times doctors are getting informed by industry, right? So if they have a pharmaceutical rep coming around, like the pharmaceutical rep is giving them information, sometimes even cutting edge information, because they're going around to these conferences and the pharmaceuticals pay them lots of money to go to these conferences, and they're getting presentations that are very kind of like skewed towards whatever that pharmaceutical company is pushing.
Yeah.
So it's not the fault of the doctors. You only have so much time in a day, but most of them don't know or understand the things that we're actually going to them for. And so thus they recommend things like I remember my girlfriend back in the day. I mean, she went to a doctor and the doctor said, oh, women have to be on
Oh yeah.
On the pill to regulate their periods. And it's like, have to. Like she was acting like it was like women in nature are defaulted just naturally.
Yeah.
And so the pill is what makes them regular. And it's like, what?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
That made zero sense. Of like,
I always like to say, just because it's common doesn't mean it's normal. Like there's so many things that like everybody does it. It's like, yeah, but once you start peeling back these layers, you're like, oh yeah, just because something's common and everybody's doing it. I mean, you hear it as a kid of like, would you jump off a bridge if everybody was jumping off a bridge? We were all taking these pharmaceuticals and not thinking of the long-term consequences of, all of it. But
yeah, and doctors aren't looking to figure out why something's happening. They're just dealing with the symptoms, right? So they're just, they're like you come in and you're like, oh, I have a rash. Okay, well, here's this cream for this rash. But they're not looking into, well, why do you have this rash, right? So so that's the person you want to work with. Is you want to find that person who's looking for the why, hunting for the why.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I did some creeping on your website, and you have 2 little girls, correct?
I do, yeah.
How old, what ages are they?
Now they're 10 and 8. Or, sorry, 12 and 8. 12 and 8.
12 and 8. Because you kind of like, I would love to hear the story of like how you got into like where Pluck came from and how you're trying to get like nutrition into your daughters. Because like, I mean, in today's culture, it's like, oh yeah, give them, goldfish crackers and Cheetos and, this is normal. And when I told my in-laws like, oh yeah, like the seasoning has like organ meats, they're like, oh my gosh. And I was like, no, like we need to eat like nose to tail. And they're like, what? Like they could not fathom. They're like, nose to what are you saying? We just eat muscle meat. What are you talking about? And then, so I want to hear like how you got your like how you got into it with in the Pluck sense, but like how did your kids handle it? Like how did they like it? Like did you have to test it on them? Did they have to eat a chunk of liver to test out first?
Yeah, so I knew about organ meats from culinary school. That's where I learned about them. I did not grow up eating them.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so 20 years ago, I knew.
Really?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
We didn't.
20 years ago, though, I knew about them. But even when I was cooking for those celebrities, I wasn't making organ meats. I was more focusing on how I cook the food, the foods that they would eat. And it wasn't until I had kids that I really went back to, okay, well, wait, hold on. Like, what is the goal of any parent? It's like you want your kid to be nutritious and happy. Really, that's kind of it. You want them to thrive. Yeah. And so I was like, well, clearly we have issues going on in the U.S. because it's something like 94% of Americans are nutrient deficient, but we're not calorie deficient. I mean, we're an obese nation. So that tells you that it's not about that we don't have enough food. It's about the food choices we're making. Yeah. So I was like, okay, well, what's the most nutritional dense food on the planet? Anyone could do a search, and organ meats or liver, beef liver will pop up as like the top thing. And so I was like, okay, but there's some major hurdles with that. People won't eat it because they think it's gross. They don't know how to cook it and they don't know how to source it. Yeah. And anyone with a kid knows it's like you can feed them, you can blend organ meats into their mashes when they're a certain age, but once they get to the age where they can make their own decisions, they won't let you do it unless they're truly a unique kid, because you're not, giving them other options and this is the only food they have. But it's like most kids will kind of like frown, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it was all about then it was like, how do I help them and help myself get organ meats into my diet without those hurdles? Mm-hmm. And it was just a lucky kind of, I feel very fortunate that I came up with it, because in today's day and age, it's really like rare to have a natural food that no one else has done. Like we are the first ones to do this. And I still can't believe that it's not laboratory made. Like it's truly just Mother Nature. It's like freeze dried powdered organ meats. We use 5 of them. We use liver, heart, kidney, spleen, and pancreas. It's the same stuff you find in the capsules. So that's kind of what gave me the idea. Mm-hmm. But what's important to me is not just that you get them, but I want you to eat them. Yeah. Yeah. And eating organ meats, as we mentioned, has its own hurdle. But the reason I want you to eat them is because, and it kind of goes back to that Bill Schindler, that ologist I was talking about. So he's got a great quote, and he says, "We are the only species in the world that looks to someone else to tell us what to eat." And there's like over 8 million species. So clearly, like, we have lost our way.
Yeah.
We did at one point have instincts around what we should eat. But more importantly, we have a biology that has been co-created over time to tell us what to eat. And when you swallow a pill, you bypass that kind of ancestral or primal communication pathway.
Yeah.
The key is you have to eat it. And so why, right? So it's our senses. So we have taste buds, we have this, our senses are all providing information that communicates to our brain and within our nervous system about, well, what does my body need? What does I want? And we can use salt as an example. If I put salt on your tongue, your body will tell you immediately whether you want more or less of that. And technically, if you try to do like 3 dips of your finger in that salt, by the third one, I would be shocked if your body will even let you eat that third or fourth one. Yeah. Like your body, like the salt will start to taste different. Mm-hmm. That is your body's natural way of protecting itself. Mm-hmm. But if you swallowed a salt tablet, 20 minutes later, 30 minutes later, you're like, why am I so bloated? Oh, I got too much of something. So like if you swallow it, your body gets no communication. It's completely delayed. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And you're not utilizing this kind of God-given biological communication pathway that's been developed for hundreds of thousands of years. Like our bodies, you know, we're in Homo sapien body, and that's like a 300,000-year-old body, you know, that's been developed over 300,000 years. So it's like, why wouldn't we? You know what I mean? Like, why are we trying to bypass what we naturally have?
Yeah. Our body's so smart. Yeah. We don't give it enough credit.
Yeah. Well, even watching my kids, like if I'm cooking, I'll have that bag of, we use the Celtic rock salt, and they'll come up and they'll ask if like they can eat salt. And I'm like, sure. And they'll stop themselves. And it's like, I want them at a young age to know, oh, I can trust my body to just stop when I need to stop. And it's so cool. I feel like we almost, as we age, we lose that instinct. Because I feel like, I don't know, maybe just because we raise weird, holistic, gremlin-y kids, but I don't know. My kids are very we have herbal tinctures at my house, and my daughter will come up. She's like, Mom, I need a drop of this one. And I'm like, if you say so, you go for it, kiddo. And we'll give her a drop of that and let her little instincts kick in.
I would almost offer, I don't know if we lose it as so much as we kind of like, I think it's still there, I guess is my point, but I think we get too heady. We get very heady around it, or lose touch with how to listen to it.
Yeah.
But I do believe it's still there. Yeah. And that's why when you do eat salt, you get a response versus if you swallowed a salt tablet. And, and the same goes for any food. Even organ meats. I mean, like one comment we get a lot of times with Pluck is that just by kids getting Pluck in their food, their palate starts to get more adventurous. That's amazing. So a lot of picky eating kids are usually, or even adults, really, it doesn't matter. Yeah. If you think about it, in the US, we're skewed. We have 4 flavors that we grew up learning about. So we have, or taste, I should say. We have salty, sweet, bitter, and sour, right? The 5th one is umami. And if anyone is picky, it's because there's potentially an emotional, psychological connection to that food that they're picky around. And or it's because their palate is skewed towards one of those tastes, those flavors.
Okay.
And in America, it's very much sweet and salty. Like that is the majority of our food is sweet and salty. So what you do to get a kid out of picky eating is you have to introduce the other flavors. So you want to get bitter, sour, and umami foods into their diet. And Pluck is umami. And umami is kind of best categorized as like savory or meaty. And umami is in lots of foods like mushrooms, tomatoes, like that flavor is in tons of foods. Yeah. But it's very potent in organ meats. And so Pluck, that the dominant flavor is umami. So what happens is like you just put that on your food, and not only do people give you the feedback of like, oh, my food tastes so good. It's like, well, I'm glad it tastes good, that you think the seasoning's good, but it's also because it's umami. Yeah. And that it's a unique taste, so it makes the other taste pop. Yeah. And then it also expands the palate so that it can kind of start to get acclimated to other flavors other than just salty and sweet.
Yeah.
It's very fascinating.
I love it. Do you recommend putting it, speaking of how you make it, do you put it on everything? Do you put it on meats and rice or everything, or do you have something specific you recommend putting it on?
I mean, for me, what I would be specific about is just using it, because it is microdosing. You know, you're only getting little amounts every time you use it. Just like with salt, you only get a little amount, but that's okay. Like, it's okay. The little amounts are actually ideal for our bodies. The human body, if you think about it, if you get too much protein, where does that extra protein? You just pee it out.
Yeah.
Like, your body will reject. If it gets too much of something, it will reject it.
Yeah.
So a lot of times that's the joke of, if you're taking lots of supplements, that your pee is just very expensive.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
That's what people say, right? And so I like really small amounts, because what happens is you get microdosing plus frequent use equals cumulative effect. So the more you use it, the more you benefit.
Yeah.
But like I said, I believe that while we do have this very American kind of mentality of like go big or go home, or like it's all or nothing, like I don't believe that that's actually how we best like take in life. Like I really don't. I think if anything that's an extreme is usually something that's not maintained for very long.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I want when I'm looking at health, I want something that is constant. And the only way for it to be constant, particularly if it's a food, is it's got to be easy and it's got to be delicious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And if it hits both of them, not just one, but both of them, we will do it. And it won't matter what's going on in our lives. We could have the hardest day and it won't matter, because it's easy and delicious.
Yeah.
Why would I not use it? But we use it on everything. I mean, from popcorn to toast to eggs to fish. I've put it on oysters before.
I love it in eggs.
Like it literally anything. It's so versatile.
Is there a way, I know with nutrients, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't cook. I actually just told her I would trade her house cleaning if she'll just meal prep for me. So, and my mom loved cooking. That gift has skipped me somehow. But correct me if I'm wrong. Can you cook the nutrients out of using Pluck, or how does that science work between? I know you can like overcook your food and then you lose.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you use any heat, you're going to kind of degrade the nutrition in that food. So like raw meat is more nutritious than cooked meat. And it doesn't even matter how much you cook it.
Yeah.
Like any heat is going to start to degrade it a little bit.
Okay.
But the other thing is it is a whole food. So, you know, it's going to take a lot for you to completely degrade it, you know? So a little bit of heat is okay still.
Do you season it towards the end of cooking, or do you put it on like right before it hits the pan?
It depends on what I'm making. So if I'm doing like ground meat, then I'll mix it in, because then it's even more protected because it's inside the meat, like if I'm making hamburgers. But honestly, the best use of it is to use it as a finishing salt, because you want to maximize the flavor, and then you also want to maximize the nutrition. So for example, like if I was making, well, anything really, but let's just say a steak. So a lot of people, the inclination is you season your steak before you cook it. But the issue is once you start cooking it, in many ways, you're just burning the seasoning, particularly if there's paprika in it. And we always see that, right? We see that the outside of the meat starts to get those black marks.
Yeah.
Well, those black marks are carcinogenic. Like those are the things that you don't want.
You didn't know that?
They're really bad for you.
Because my kid, like my son loves crispy meat. And I'm like, why do you love the crispy part? But he likes the crunch.
I'm sorry,
texture.
what?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
When you grill meat, I mean, I love barbecue myself, but you know, like you go to Texas or anywhere in the South and you get like brisket and it's completely black on the outside of it. Like it's not good for you. It's
so
not
what about it is so is it the seasonings that are kind of burnt that turn into a carcinogen, or is it
anything
the meat?
Anything you burn is carcinogenic. So that could be, the seasonings that burnt, or if you burnt the outside of the meat, like if it's black, like blackened fish, you know, you can see that that's not healthy for you. That's burnt seasonings.
No, I did not know that. That is new information for me.
But that like, so here's an example though, like some of the ways you can help to offset, because it's not, once again, it's not about throwing the baby out with the bathwater. I'm not going to tell people like, don't eat barbecue. I love barbecue.
And like the crunchy, crispy skin of a chicken is like the best part.
Yeah,
oh my gosh, you're disgusting. Are you kidding me?
No, I'm not joking. You get that skin crispy.
Oh, that's the
so
best.
Good.
Oh,
it's so good.
Cancel this podcast. I'm leaving right now.
You're like, you can use, hey, here's one. You're going to love this. So if you, for people that are carnivore, meaning that they only eat animal-based products, you can use chicken skins as egg rolls.
Nice.
Okay. Well, I mean, we use the intestines, right, for like sausages and stuff, which again,
but if you wanted to make your own egg roll, you just the same insides you put in an egg roll. You could use noodles and little cuts up of vegetables and meat, right? But instead of wrapping it in an egg roll, which is gluten and has different ingredient grains stuff, you can just wrap it in chicken skin, and then you cook it the same way. You can fry it, you can put it in an air fryer, you can bake it, whatever you want, and it will crisp up and be just like an egg roll, but healthier for you.
Yeah.
so
I love that.
I'm trying. Like I used to just eat Jack's Pizza for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So like I've come a long way to where now I live on a homestead and I have like 50 birds out, like making eggs for me right now. And we just did meat birds and processed them, and our freezer is filled, and we gave some to family and stuff like that. But that's interesting about the skin. I'm trying to I'm growing. Everything's growing. We kept the feet, we kept the liver, we kept the heart, kidneys. Yeah, we kept the kidneys, some of them. But like the skin, I always peel off, like of the chicken, because the texture's kind of gross. I'm not gonna lie. What am I doing? What am I doing wrong that is making it kind of like icky? I feel like it's a little slimy.
What's the texture?
It feels a little too
slimy. So, but if you crisp it up, then it's not slimy.
I don't know why I'm sweating. I'm like, what am I doing?
This is off topic, which is normal for us.
Yeah.
Sort of off topic, but I kind of started this with my own health issues. Kind of started like kind of the whole family's pivot into this crazy that we are now. But I found a post that popped up on Facebook, The Memories. It was from like 11 years ago, and it was me making homemade bone broth. And you'd pick up the crock pot, and the chicken foot would pop out. And I think she had commented on one of my posts, and she's like, okay, I can see something along the lines of like, I can see not eating gluten anymore, but like I draw the line at chicken feet. And now here she is.
Now
12
I literally
years later,
butcher them
butchering
myself, and it's
chicken feet are amazing in broth. They make it so gelatinous.
I was wrong. I fully admit I have grown. I was wrong.
What a far, I don't know, turn we've all turned.
I used to hate people like me, but the thing is that like I had to hit like a health rock bottom to be like, oh, like I was also never taught or didn't observe like, hey, like I ate this thing and like now my stomach, like there was never a connection there to be like, oh, like I ate a thing and now I feel like crap. That's odd. Maybe I should stop eating that thing. Like that's just not how my brain operated. And so now, yes, we harvest our own birds, and I definitely cook with chicken feet, and it's like gelatinous and delicious and love it. And now I can never go back. But I do want to ask though, because a lot of the times when I tell people like, oh, hey, like, you can get a lot of nutrients just by like eating organ meats, and they're like, ew, organ meats, like even liver, like, isn't that what detoxifies?
That's the filter.
Yeah, that's the filter. Why are you eating where like the toxins go through that can't be nutritious? What do you say to that? Because I don't ever really feel like I have a good answer.
No, yeah, it's a great question. So let me hold that thought, because I did want to, I realized I didn't finish something, which was, I was going to say what to help offset barbecue, right?
Oh, yeah.
So one of the things you can eat to help offset the carcinogenic, burnt parts of barbecue is to eat cultured vegetables, sauerkraut.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Okay. So that will help, first of all.
Good focus. Good job.
Yeah.
But to answer your question though, so yeah, the misconception is that the liver and kidney, because that's ultimately what you're talking about. When we talk about offal, or because OFFAL is another name for organ meats, which is of course a perfect name because everyone thinks it tastes gross, right? So it's awful. Yeah. But when we talk about organ meats, we're talking about everything but the muscle and the bones. So I know when people hear organ meats, they're only thinking about like, what do you mean? Liver, heart, kidney, spleen. But there's so much more to the animal. Like the tongue is considered offal. The tail, ossobuco style, the hooves, the feet, as you mentioned. the eyeballs, the testicles, the ovaries, those are all considered parts that are edible, the stomach lining, the lungs, all of it. But the kind of urban myth is that the liver and the kidney are detoxification pathways. And so why would we be eating that? And that's really, those are the organs they're talking about. And the thing is that when you think of that, you're imagining them more like a sponge, that they just absorb the toxins and then the toxins never leave. And so if you eat the organ, the liver and the kidney, then you're getting those toxins. But if you think about it, the organ is designed to keep you alive and to filter out the toxins. And if it kept those toxins in it, it wouldn't be able to do its job. Like imagine your kitchen sink. If your kitchen sink strainer never got cleaned, that water would clog up and soon your kitchen sink would not be usable.
Yeah.
So why would our body work like that? If our body worked like that, we would all be dying within 15 days or something like that. You know what I mean? And within a couple months. Yeah. So the body is this beautiful, miraculous thing of that just system that is designed to keep itself alive. So what it does, you want to think of it more like.
Are you in search of tinctures for adults, teens, and kids? We have the brand for you. It is BioRay. They have the whole spectrum of parasites, liver, gut, sex drive, everything. They have everything you need in tincture form, and it's gentle and it's safe for your kids and your family. So you should buy it.
Yeah. Check out bioarray.com. Use code UTSP10 for 10% off your orders. Their website is super helpful. If you have any questions, their customer service is one of the best. You can message them on anything. Like I had a dropper clog and I just wanted to make sure like, hey, is this clogged or am I growing like a bacteria that is going to be harmful or whatever? They were super helpful. I sent pictures and their response is amazing. So you can also go and fill out this like questionnaire thing on their website and they will help direct you into what kind of supplements you need.
Yeah, because it's really hard to determine. Like it's hard to like observe your own body and be like, what do I actually need? And they'll like ask leading questions so that they can help guide you to what you really need. So bioarray.com, code UTSP10.
You want to think of it more like a filter. And so what it's doing is it's processing and converting potentially toxic materials, byproducts, into water-soluble forms. And once it's in water-soluble forms, it can then leave your body. It can then make it, leave your poop, your pee, your sweat. Like that's why if you've ever detoxed, truly detoxed, and you smell your skin, it smells metallic. And it's because the skin, the byproducts are leaving through the pores of your skin. Yeah. So really what you want to think about or know is that if you are overweight and or you have your elimination pathways, meaning you're not pooping regularly, you're not peeing regularly, then those are your elimination pathways. And that means that those are not working well and that most likely the toxins are not leaving your body. And if that's the case, guess where they get stored? They don't get stored in the liver and the kidney because, like we said, if it did that, the liver and kidney wouldn't be able to do its job. Yeah. So they get stored in your fat. Yeah. They go right to your fat. So what happens is if you're hugely overweight and you detox too fast, most people can either get really sick or even kill themselves because the toxins get released too quickly and they have nowhere to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like you really do have to be careful. That's why I'm like such a big fan of like you ease into things. You look for little small amounts versus trying to go big, go home kind of mentality.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, and then the other kind of myth is like, oh, well, am I going to get too much of something? Am I going to get too much vitamin A, if I eat that liver, or too much iron? And it's like, well, it just goes back to that. What I was saying is your body's not going to let you eat too much. Like your body naturally knows when to stop or not stop. The only time it gets confused is when we're eating these frankenfoods, like these foods that are designed to trick our bodies into thinking that there's nutrition. Because if you think about it, in nature, flavor typically equated that it was nutritious. So if you had an apple or some piece of fruit hanging from a tree, you bit into that, it was flavorful, it's sweet, that equaled, okay, it's got nutrition. And then you ate it and your body, because it was getting that nutrition, it told itself when to stop. Like, okay, you've had enough. Like, don't eat any more oranges or mangoes or whatever it was, right?
Yeah.
But when we have these products that have mango flavoring, but none of the mango nutrition, your body just eats it and eats it and eats it. It's like, okay, when's the nutrition coming? When am I supposed to stop?
Yeah.
Because the nutrition tells you when to stop, right? But it never comes. And then what does come is you just feeling bloated and gross because you've filled your stomach with, stuff that your body doesn't feel good about.
It just doesn't give you the like stop. Like, hey, like whereas you can't really. I don't know where I heard it. Someone said like you can't overeat meat. Like I've tried being like, okay, here's this. I've made us a huge meal. I'm gonna just like try to overeat, and you just can't. Like your body like stops you. Like I've had enough. Like I feel satisfied. That's enough. But if you're eating a hyper processed MSG filled stuff, like it actually is telling your brain to just keep going to keep getting that, like, I don't know if it's a dopamine hit, but like some kind of you can't like you can't get satiated when you're eating fake food, right?
I would argue that you probably could get stuffed with eating meat, but or really almost anything. And it's not to refute what I just said, but it's more because we do the other mistake we make. So one is we're making bad food choices sometimes, or choosing foods that aren't, foods you find in nature.
Right.
But the other one is we're eating way too fast.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you do have to slow down enough to let your body get the communication pathway.
Yeah.
It's almost like, when you're trying to get on the internet and it just keeps spinning, and you're like, why is it taking so long? And you close your computer. Well, the minute you close your computer is probably when it finally got online, right?
Yeah.
But we're so impatient, and it's the same thing. It's like, like you just keep eating. And if you just slow down for a second, your body would probably resonate or register like, actually, I'm filled.
Yeah.
Because, you think about on holidays, people have to undo their belts, and it's usually because, and for most holidays, I think you're eating mostly homemade, home cooked food mostly. So it is hopefully real food. But yet people still overeat. And I think it's not only because they're combining too many foods, but also because they're eating too fast.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've kind of set up this little, like for dinner at the least, like if my husband is able to eat like breakfast or lunch with us too, we'll do it then too. But like definitely for dinner, like we have no devices at all. We say a prayer before we eat, and we try to don't rush away. Like we've tried to be very intentional, because my husband went to a like public school, and he was like, you had like 10 minutes to like cram down your food, and it took a long time for both of us to be like, hey, like slow down. Like there is no rush. Like we need to appreciate the food. Let our bodies like talk to us about like how does it taste? Is it, are we chewing enough? Cause that's also a problem I was struggling with, and actually it helps my digestion so much to just freaking chew. Like, chew it further than like 5, and then swallow like half chewed chunks. Like it's amazing the difference in your digestion if you just freaking chew your food.
Yeah.
But so like, do you have a question before I move on?
No.
Okay. I want to talk about regenerative farming and how important that is. We can go a couple different directions, but like you get your cows for like the organ meats from a regenerative farm. Why is that important today? And why is it not just some random meat on the shelf at Walmart equivalent?
It's such a good question. And it's actually a little bit more convoluted than I think people would realize. So I am of the belief, like, because you kind of have to almost like break it all down. Like, so, okay, our grass, like cows are designed to eat grass, and they're not designed to eat other animals because they're herbivores. That's what they do, is they graze on pasture, and then they turn that grass into these nutrient rich meat inside their, of their bodies. And the issue is that, everyone is kind of confused around just cows, these days, because we have feedlots where the cow, so every cow starts out grass fed, every one of them. But then they're usually passed on. There's the two kind of tiers before they get slaughtered. So one might be an in-between stage. And in that in-between stage, they leave their mother in the pasture that they're on with their mother. And now they're either getting bulked up a little bit more, and they still might be fed grass during that time, but it's just they've been weaned, and they're kind of like in this in-between state of either they're almost going to be at a CAFO, which is a confined feedlot, or they're going to go to a new pasture that's not with their mom. And then there's the third one, which is if they are like a conventional cow, if they go down that path, then they're definitely on a feedlot for the third one. So, and then if they're on a feedlot, then they are absolutely getting grains. They're not getting fed grass. They're just being bulked up. And it's not just grains they get. I mean, they get other things too. Some CAFOs use antibiotics to bulk the animals up. They do so many different things. But the question then becomes, okay, well, if they're all started out as grass feeding, which is best? Should they be 100% grass fed, or is there ever a time when they should get some grains? And if you talk to ranchers, and depending on where you're buying that meat, so like we get our organ meats from cows that are in New Zealand. New Zealand's an island, and they get green grass year round. Yeah. So weather-wise, that's great to get 100% grass-fed cow there, because it's possible. But in the U.S., you can't find any region in the U.S. that gets green grass all year round. And so then it's about, we'll talk to the ranchers, like what are they finding that works the best? And the reputable ranchers, like what they'll do is like, okay, well, I still give my cow grass, but it's not green grass during the winter. And then what we're doing is we're fermenting the grass to make it more digestible for them, right? So it's different grass, but it's still pretty darn good, right? And if you go to the science papers, they'll say that that's the green grass or just the 100% grass-fed cows are the most nutritious. But then you'll talk to some others and you'll be like, well, actually though, grain-fed cows are still nutritious. It's slightly different numbers than when it's 100% grass-fed. So this idea that some people are like, I'm only 100% grass-fed, and others are like, well, I only do conventional. It's like, well, which is better? You know, I mean, I say you got to go, like, if your pocketbook doesn't allow you to eat 100% grass-fed cows all the time, does that mean you should just go meatless, half your week? I'm like, no, I would just get conventional. Like, don't be so dogmatic that you don't take care of your health. Yeah. And your health is going to be best when it's animal-based, in my judgment. So whole animal, not just meat, but the whole animal. And if that means sometimes getting some of it non-organic or some of it conventional, then do it. Do it. It's okay.
Because the alternative to eating conventional meat for most people would be, well, I'm just going to grab this bag of chips because this meat is not
exactly
great meat. It's like, well, you have to find your balance, find your way.
Totally. It's a perfect example of like, what are you going to eat if you don't eat meat? Well, what happens is we graze on the packaged foods because we didn't get enough protein that day, so we're either in a hangry kind of mood, and we start making these poor choices. And we go for the chips or the ice cream or the things that are going to give us fat, but processed food fat, ultra processed. So exactly, that's a perfect example. And I would say it's far better just to eat the conventional meat or the animal-based product than to not. But if you have the choice, 100% grass-fed. Now, the real reason to do 100% grass-fed is not just for the nutrition, is really for the plant, to take care of the planet. Like, so that's the piece that most people don't talk about. It's like, well, because a lot of people just look at it as black and white. Well, like eating meat is bad for the planet. It's like, not really. And it goes the same way I was talking about food of like, well, it's not necessarily that it's not so black and white. Food isn't necessarily bad. It's how you prepare it that determines whether it's bad or good, right? And it's the same thing with the animal. Having a cow is not a bad thing. It's how you raise the cow can determine whether it's pro-planet or against the planet. And so, regenerative cows are they're better for you. It's like they're pro-planet because they're working with the environment versus against it. Yeah. So that's how I would look at it all personally.
Just like how you were talking about with the vegetables, and people are being like, oh, I'm anti, nightshades or all these, vegetables that we've been told for years to eat. It's like, well, but it's the same with cows, same with vegetables. Like, but how was it raised? Like, how was it grown? Like, I have a garden and I know that, I don't spray any pesticides, herbicides, insecticides, fungicides. None of those things are sprayed on my garden. But my neighbor over here who sells at the farmer's market up the road sprays all of that. But yet people are going to the farmer's market thinking that they're doing better than the grocery store, but it's actually like probably worse because it's not, maybe regulated a little bit. But it's like, you have to know what happened during its lifespan, but also do the best you can with what you have, because we're never on here being like, you have to do it this way, and if you're not, you are a failure at the holistic crunchy life. No, like we all have budgets, we all have things and families we need to take care of. It's never about that, but it's more about like, you didn't grow up with this, we didn't grow up with this, and we're just trying to like, try to kind of change it for the next generation of health. Okay.
It frustrates me to knowing that sometimes the health recommendations out there, it makes it feel like the health is for the wealthy.
Yeah.
It makes me so frustrated. Like, okay, if we were talking about meat, like a lot of people don't realize this, but if you can just join like a meat share, like I was just checking out this one farmer's post recently, and they were showing like, oh, you can get a quarter of the cow, right? Now, yes, up front you got to pay like nearly $900 for that quarter to half a cow, right? But here's the deal: every pound of that meat is $4.25.
Yeah.
$4.25.
We share the same farmer, and I think the last time I did a roundup, it was $5.99 a pound, and the farmer's wife has celiac, so they're very cautious with what they feed their cattle. And I was like, $5.90. You can't even hardly buy conventional meat for $5.99 a pound.
You just have to plan ahead. That's the only problem. You have to budget and plan ahead, and like work with the season.
And you're gonna get cuts that you may not know how to cook, but that's what internet's for. Just do a search. But it's like that is the cheapest way to get meat. Absolutely, hands down, and really quality meat. So there are absolutely ways to save your budget but still eat meat, and you don't have to compromise on quality.
Yeah. And you're supporting a small business, like a small farmer.
Absolutely. And they need the support. They need the support.
Yeah. So on the getting cuts of meat you don't want, I say yes to the liver every time. And now I'm getting a nice stash of livers in my deep freeze, because the one time I tried to make it, like I've forced down a lot of like interesting, gross things in the name of health, but even I can't really force in the liver. How do you recommend making liver for? It doesn't even have to be for the toddlers, just for us to force ourselves to eat. Do you have any tricks?
How are you eating it right now?
It's been like 5 years since I've tried. Maybe, well, it's probably been like 7 years since I've tried.
I did the liver and onions recipe I found on Pinterest. And
I tried to do a lemon pepper one because I love lemon. And I'm like, well, lemon can hide a lot of stuff. And it did not.
No, it's just not going to hide that. Yeah. If anything, it's going to probably enhance it.
Okay. Made it worse.
Well, so one thing I would do is not just focus on the liver. Like a lot of people, now these days you hear people just eating ribeyes and beef liver, and it's like, well, is that really how we're meant to eat? Because if we were a tribe, right, and of like 19 people, and our warriors went out to go catch a cow or whatever the animal was at the time, obviously it wasn't cow, but like, they would probably fast when they were going hunting, because fasting kind of heightens their skills. And then once they kill the animal, which sometimes could take days to a week, right, or more, they would then need to replenish their stores because they've been fasting the whole time. So the first thing they would eat would be either the liver or the heart, and they would eat it raw right there.
Yeah.
Right. So if you think of it from that perspective, then they dress the animal and then they bring it back to the tribe for everyone else to eat. Well, the animal's only got one liver or one heart. So that means that's already gone.
Yeah. So
when you get back to the area, if you already gotten rid of the liver, where does the other nutrition come from? Well, like for example, spleen has 5 times more iron than liver.
Oh, wow.
No
liver
way.
Is just kind of, the liver is just focused on, but you get something from everything.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of overlap. So I really do believe that it's key to try to get as much of that animal as you can. Now, if you have lots of liver, what I would do is, the thing that's overwhelming is the texture. That's ultimately what people get thrown off by. So when you get it, it's frozen. So my point is just keep it frozen, because it's when it's defrosted, that's when it gets really like slimy and it's gross, right?
Yeah.
So keep it frozen. And then every time you make ground meat, pull out that liver and just grate it. Use a box grater, grate it right into the ground meat.
Amazing.
And just the key is don't have a too high of a ratio. So if you're using a pound of meat, then don't go over like 2 to 4 tablespoons of grated liver.
Okay.
So 4 tablespoons max. But if you're just new to this, I would say start with 2.
Yeah, which kind of goes back to the all or nothing. You're just getting a little liver. You don't have to substitute dinner for just a liver.
And then throw some Pluck on it for some extra nutrients and good seasoning.
I don't have the spleen, so we'll get the spleen from you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
I'm going to get the spleen next time. I'm about to get my next quarter of a cow, so.
Oh, there you go. So, Pluck has liver, heart, kidney, spleen, and pancreas. So that's 5 organs that most people don't get. I mean, or at least 4 of them.
Can you talk to me about the pancreas? Because I don't know anything about the pancreas. I was reading your website and I was like, what? Like, I mean, health-wise, I know about the pancreas, but like in terms of eating it, like tell me, what's going on with the pancreas?
Pancreas is fascinating because pancreas is like, so if you think about it, every organ has got something. And like I mentioned, they overlap. But I look at animal-based products as like supports like. So we were talking earlier about the myths of the liver and the kidney.
Yeah.
Well, the liver has, for example, all the nutrients it needs to do its job. So when you're eating that beef liver, it's highest in the nutrients that your liver needs.
Okay.
Same thing with heart. Same thing with brain. You know what I mean? Like, so every part of that cow represents that organ represents the same in your organ. That's why, for example, like if you have heart issues, it's recommended you eat beef heart because beef heart is high in CoQ10. And what's in most heart medications? It's CoQ10, right? So there is really this ancestral concept of like supports like. So for pancreas, yes, it has B12, which so does meat. It's high in selenium, which helps to maintain proper thyroid function for anyone that has thyroid issues. It promotes metabolism. It's also known for containing, and here's the reason why we put it in there, it contains enzymes. So enzymes like protease, lipase, these are enzymes that support digestion because that's what the pancreas does.
Okay. Yeah, okay.
So when you eat pancreas in your food, you're actually making that food more digestible.
That's awesome.
Isn't that cool?
That is so cool.
You don't have to take pineapple enzymes or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, it's like you're getting Mother Nature has taken care of us in every way. We just need to eat.
We have complicated it. Yeah. We have complicated it by like trying to make it easy and simple.
Yeah. Oh, you can even get vitamin C, for example. You can get vitamin C from an animal. You just got to get it from the organ meat, and it's got to be specific, from certain organs. It's like, if you break down like what is in a prenatal even, right? That's the thing that science has told us, this is what you need to create life. It's in all the organs.
Yeah.
Like when you take different parts of the organs, it's all there.
Yeah. I love it.
And it's packaged as Mother Nature intended,
Yeah. We just gotten away from the God's design of how we're supposed to eat. And like our brain doesn't I'm trying to overrule my brain of like even the texture thing with liver. I'm like, I can do hard things. Like it stinks, but like I want these nutrients. But that's a really great tip about shredding it. I'm gonna do that tonight.
Because we make a lot of chili at my house because my kids won't eat them. One of my kids won't eat the ingredients separately, and he'll still kind of whine when it's in chili, but he'll eat it. So start grating it in that.
Totally. So you can grate it in the chili and all that. Totally. Now here is the ultimate tip though.
Are you a person?
I'm a person.
Are you a person that breathes? Yeah. Then you probably have a worm in your booty.
Oh.
If you have a pulse, you have a parasite. Yeah. So, and it's not because you're dirty and it's not because you're gross and you can wash your hands 75 times a day.
Even if you haven't been to a third world country,
you're going to get worms.
Yep.
So everybody go to rogershood.com and use the code UTSP10. You'll get 10% off of this kit. It's a beautifully packaged kit. It has everything you need for a 30-day cleanse to get those worms out of you.
Anything that you like, as long as you do something consistently,
Yeah.
you can learn to like it.
Yeah.
So think about anything in your life that started out as like, I don't really like chocolate. I don't like dark chocolate. But the more you ate dark chocolate, the more you
you're
started
totally
to like
right.
it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You can literally change it. Like, you talk to anyone that's ever been incarcerated, they'll say, oh, the food in jail is horrible. The first day they get there, they'll say it's horrible.
Yeah.
When they're finally out, they'll still think it's horrible the whole time, but when they get out, they'll actually miss it. And it's mostly because if you get used to something, you're eating it daily, you just start, your body will make it so that you like it. So that's really how it goes with anything. Like, if you want to learn to like something, then like, keep eating it. But here's the thing. If you're cooking it in a specific way that doesn't resonate with you, then it may not be the food. It may be how you're cooking it. And I did a cooking demo on liver recently, and I was like, okay, I'm going to show you 3 different ways to eat this liver. And I'm going to guess that you're going to like all 3 of them, even though most people in the audience said they'd never liked liver. Okay. So the first thing I did was I had it frozen, and then I cut it up into little pieces, just tiny, tiny little pieces. And I then passed it out and I gave it to them to eat raw. Okay. And right away, people are like, that's not as bad as it usually tastes, because when liver starts to taste bad, the more you cook it. So when it's raw, the flavor is not as intense. So me leaving it on the
pan to just get brown and get carcinogen. And I'm like, I'm just going to muscle through it. I made it worse.
Throw it on the floor. Throw it on the floor and tell everyone in the family to jump on it and just, So eating it raw is going to be the most kind of flavorful to a degree in terms of its natural flavor. It's going to get more and more metallic the more you cook it.
Interesting.
So then I cooked it, but I cooked it in some ghee, which you could, or you could do butter, and I just did it very lightly. And then I made sure that it was not overcooked. Now, when people cook anything, if you cook it all the way in the pan and then you throw it on the plate, it now is overcooked because there's residual heat. So what you want to do, particularly when you're cooking meats and even pastas or vegetables, and you want them a little al dente, like a little less cooked, you want to cook them, but then pull them off the pan a little bit early. So the meat might be still slightly pink, it's, it's not bloody, but it still might be slightly pink if you're cooking it like that. And then the residual heat will continue to cook it. And so you do that with liver. You like make sure that it's not fully pale, but it's still got a little bit of redness in it. And then you pull it off and then toss it in some, I just put salt on it and I served it. And everyone was like, hey, this isn't so bad because it wasn't overcooked. And then what I did is I took that same the liver, and I made a pate with it. So I took the liver that wasn't overcooked, which is key, and then I blended it with caramelized onions. Caramelized onions are a great addition to any organ meats because it brings the sweetness in the onion helps to offset the flavor. And then you can do other things too, like anything like dairy or cheese, so milks, creams, dairies. Those are all going to help to offset the flavor as well. Herbs, of course. Acids are not necessarily going to help offset it. They're going to heighten it. They're going to brighten the flavor. So like that's why lemon juice.
Everything polar opposite. Because I was like, I like lemon pepper chicken. Maybe it was a chicken liver. Because I assumed, I was like, well, if I like lemon pepper chicken, maybe I'll like lemon pepper chicken liver. And it did not. I'm pretty sure.
We're not chefs. I just learned to cook in the last 4 years. So,
but you know what? I wanted to comment on this earlier. So here's the thing. A lot of us think because we eat, we're supposed to love cooking or that we're supposed to be really good at it. And it's like, nah, it's not true. Most people don't like it. They don't enjoy it. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it. The only way to be healthy is to cook from home. That is the key thing you should do is make food that is an ingredient versus has ingredients. So that right away is going to change your whole life if you just start eating at home, if you are eating out a lot. But then the other thing is just, it's okay to not be good at it, to not like it or anything like that, but just create the environment that is going to be conducive towards the things you do like. So if you like listening to this podcast, then do this while you're cooking.
Yeah.
Or if you like specific music or something like that, or you like talking to a friend, like talk to them while you're cooking, you know, whatever it is, create the environment that's going to be conducive towards putting a smile on your face. And then lastly, don't do things that you don't like. So if you're, let's say, intimidated by recipes, well, then don't do a recipe. Think of it more like a formula. What is the formula you need in a meal? Well, I need protein. What protein? Doesn't matter. Today it's fish. Tomorrow it's chicken. The next day it's steak, lamb, pork. You know, you choose the protein. And then, well, I need some fat. Great. What are you making? I'm doing Italian. Cool. Well, use some olive oil. Use some ghee. Use some butter. Okay, well, I'm doing this, that. I'm doing fish. Great. Use coconut oil. Use lard. Use tallow. You know, like just change the fat up. And then lastly, it's like, well, okay, and this is really just your belief or not in terms of what diet you follow. But then it's like, okay, I need a vegetable. Great. Today it's an Asian dish, so I'm going to use bok choy. Tomorrow it's an Italian dish, so I'm going to use zucchini and spinach. The day after it's a salad, you know, we're going to do Caesar salads with chicken. You know what I mean? Like just change up the vegetable. And then you're like, well, but I like to use grains. Great. Okay. But have the protein be the biggest part of your meal, and then have the grain or the starch be the smallest part.
Yeah.
I love that you identified that, because I used to proclaim that I hated cooking and I didn't like it. And it wasn't until I had my daughter that I was like, oh, I need to feed her nutritious food. And once you read all the labels to everything, you're like, I'm not feeding this to her. So I had to learn how to make things from scratch. And it's more like I've grown to like it. And I didn't really realize it until you were saying it, that I've grown to like it. And it's a labor of love of like, do I want to make everything from scratch all the time? And I don't, but a lot of the stuff I do, but it's a labor of love for my family. And that's how I'm choosing to spend my time right now in this season of life. But
and I'm glad there are people like professional chefs and sister-in-laws who can be bribed or paid into making food for you.
We'll just trade services.
There we go.
That's the second time you said that, but that's really a smart idea. I don't know if you're joking, but
no, we're literally gonna do it, because I made a homemade chicken pot pie last week, and it was a big pot pie, and so I just sent the rest home with her, and she was like, hey, can you make me food to take to work? And I was like, yeah, I'll absolutely.
I'll just eat that pot pie all week.
Well, because that's how, honestly, that's the only reason why I survive making things from scratch, is whenever I cook, I make enough for 2 or 3 meals. I just do it all at once in big pots, and I'm sure my biggest fear is hosting a chef. I'd be like, oh my gosh, I just learned things from the internet. I don't know what I'm doing. But if I can help serve her family too, then that's a great joy to me. And she'll but sharing trades, sharing the thing that you like or don't like is, to me, it's kind of that idea of it takes the village. Yes.
Why not?
I'm trying to get her to move onto my property. And so
that would be
tell
amazing,
the husbands.
right?
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? If you don't mind cleaning houses and you don't like cleaning houses, but you like cooking and you don't like cooking, then that sounds like a fantastic trade.
It's a great trade. Yeah.
I would take that trade.
There we go.
What is it that you hate to do? So are you the main cook in your house? Obviously. I'm
not the only cook. My daughters are more and more learning, and particularly my older one likes to do stuff, but my wife does do some cooking. It's such a funny, might sound like a funny answer, but I find that actually I don't like many things when my resources are maxed out. So meaning when I'm not taking care of myself, everything feels like a burden.
Oh, yeah.
You get what I mean?
Yeah.
But when I'm rested, fed, when all my basic needs are met, nothing negatively affect. I'm I'll be of service. How can I help? What can I do? So I love expressing my care and love for someone through food or through acts of service. But like I said, I have to have my basic needs met before I can really be in that giving place.
Right.
Yeah.
I love that.
I was hearing it the other day. I can't remember who was saying it, but like they were saying like, yes, like it's so good to volunteer in other countries and do mission trips and do all these things. And it's so great. But how is your village at home? How is like your community, like the people that you spend time with every single day or week? Like how much are we actually giving to them? And that also brought on the thought in the conversation of like, is it Maslow's hierarchy of needs? You need like shelter, food, clean water. Like if those basic things are not being met, it's much harder to pour from your cup. And so, I totally agree. And we're at a place where like we're thriving in different places. Like I never thought I would be the cook of the group, but like if we can serve each other's families in that way, it's a blessing. Okay.
And where we aren't going to necessarily yet go get a pancreas, we can come to you and get that from you and your company.
And that's what that's our mission of our whole podcast is we're talking to moms like us, like women like us, people like us who can and recommending brands like when the world is kind of going bananas right now, we can go to like a company like Pluck or a Static Shield. We've interviewed a guy about EMFs, which he was great. His whole company is awesome. Like we want to recommend people who are good people and like are picking quality things. Like my favorite thing about your brand is that it doesn't have natural flavors in it. Like I don't know.
So hard
There's
to find.
no one out there that doesn't throw natural flavors in it, which then has like 307 potential ingredients within that umbrella term or something.
It's an unregulated flavor industry is completely unregulated. They regulate themselves, and it's really hard to know what they're putting in. But I do tend to inform people of like, okay, all seasonings out there, or most of them, let's say, what's the first ingredient of the mix?
Salt, usually.
Salt.
Yeah.
It's salt, right? And why is that? Always be asking why. Well, because salt's cheap.
Oh,
so it's a way to make money off your product. So really, when you have salt, when you see an ingredient list, the first thing means that it's the highest ingredient or the most of that ingredient, but you don't know how much necessarily. I mean, yes, you can look at the nutritional facts box, but that's based on serving size. And then you got to do the math and figure out, well, how many servings is in here and what is actually, how much is that? Because a lot of times we see these numbers, but we don't actually visually know what the volume is.
Yeah.
Like when you see like it has, 7 grams of sugar, but what is 7 grams? Or it has 36 grams. Like what is 36? It's like we have a tough time visualizing that. And so really in many ways, like most seasonings are salt with seasoning. Because you have to assume if it's the cheapest ingredient, they're probably putting in as much of it as that they can, right?
Yeah.
But the difference with Pluck is our first ingredient is onion. And it's not powdered onion, which sometimes powdered onion has other things in it, flow agents and stuff. It's granulated onion. So that's literally an organic onion that's been dried and granulated. That's it.
Amazing.
There's nothing else added to it. So that's the first ingredient. Second ingredient is organ meats. And then depending on the flavor you get, the third or fourth ingredient is red mineral salt. That's
awesome.
That's it. Like, and then there's some other herbs, but like, so ours is a seasoning with salt versus being a salt with seasoning. So that's why I believe it's very flavorful, but I also believe that, you might need to add some salt to it if you're someone who needs less salt, but I'd rather have you add salt than be giving you something too salty, because most food out there is way too salty.
Yeah.
Way too salty.
Yeah.
And then, like you already said, it has other ingredients in there, flow agents or seed oils or sugar or some kind of preservative or something to kind of keep it from discoloring or separating. So it's like the more you can get all that junk out of your diet, the better off. And that's why I'm such a big fan of like, everything on the label you should be able to read and understand.
Yeah.
And then the more you can buy things that don't have lists, in it, even better, you know, like if you like, here's the thing, like, I'm selling a product that's got organ meats in it and other seasoning. But if you're like, I just don't really, I want it to be simpler even than what they're doing. Great. Well, we have a product called Pure, which is just organ meats. There's no salt. There's no seasoning. Buy that and add that to your seasoning.
Yeah.
So I don't really care how you get organ meats in. I'm more just saying like, let's get them in our diet, because you mentioned you have a lot of mothers and whatnot listening to your podcast. Well, like there's nothing better than seeing your kid. Like we all have those sideways days, you know, those days where it's like we didn't meal plan, we didn't really get together. It was a busier day than we thought, and so it's like, let's just eat out or let's get pizza. Like some parents have it more often than others, right? And I don't know about you, but when I have days like that, since I know better, I feel bad. I'm like, they're having pizza again, or they're doing this. And so I feel like I did bad. I'm not being a good parent.
Yeah.
Well, I feel a heck of a lot better when I add Pluck to that pizza.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Because I'm like,
So
well,
you
at
add
least
it
they just
to-
got their organ meats.
You add it to things like even that you bring in, not necessarily things you
heck
just
yeah.
cook.
Like literally
That's
my
awesome.
kids, they live
genius.
they live it on everything.
Yeah.
Like I'm definitely one of those people. I'm not one of those people that I made this, but we're eating something else. Like, no, my kids love Pluck. Like we use it on literally everything.
That's a great
we
idea.
sell these kind of seasoning jars on our
Yeah,
website.
I was gonna bring that up. They're so
Okay.
cute.
Yeah, we sell those, and so I just have that out, and then I just keep them filled, and then like sometimes I want the spicy mild, sometimes I want the zesty garlic, sometimes I want the original. I just flip back and forth depending on what the recipe is or what I'm making or what my kind of sensibilities want that day.
Yeah. I love it.
I love it. I told you when we were starting, but like I have a friend who has a child right now. Her son is on like a very restrictive diet because he's having some like very intense gut issues, and so his diet is very limited. And I was like, hey, come over. I'll just make ground beef, and we can all just eat ground beef together. It'll be fine. And I was like, I'm going to use this seasoning. I sent her a picture, and I sent her the ingredients, the picture of the ingredients on the back. And she was like, yeah, that should be fine. She's like, he'll probably be so excited to have any type of flavor at all. And the kid downed it. And even her other kid, who's not on a super strict diet, downed it. She was like, don't say anything. Don't mention a word. I was like, I'm not going to say anything. They're like 5 and 4.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, no. And my kid doesn't bat an eye.
Yeah.
Loved it.
Yeah, you don't need to tell them what it is. I mean, it's so funny because some parents get so specific, like, I just feel like I have to be so transparent. I'm like, no, you're convincing yourself of that, because here's the reality. If you give your kid, if you put lemon pepper on their steak, let's just say, right? Are you actually telling them, well, honey, guess what? I just put lemon zest with this citric acid on it, and then like pepper with this silicone dioxide. You're not listing every freaking ingredient. You're just saying lemon pepper, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, just tell them I'm putting some seasoning on your food.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You don't tell them literally what's in it. But it is interesting. I mean, like the testimonies I hear and I see, like what you just shared is a beautiful one. Another one someone was telling me is like their daughter is just so picky and won't eat anything, won't even eat meat and stuff. And yet everyone else in the family does. And the daughter is just suffering and having all these health issues. And the mom, I gave her some Pluck, and she took it home and she put it in her daughter eats these chicken nuggets. That's kind of all she'll do. But what the mom did, because I told her, I'm like, put it in the ketchup or whatever sauce she's using. Like, don't tell her, just put it in the ketchup. And so she did that, and she doesn't know for sure, but her daughter actually, like, I can't remember what it was. There was some kind of like, her daughter had mono and was like having health issues constantly. And that night after eating it, she didn't have the issues.
That's awesome.
And I've heard other things like father told me his daughter was born with this bad skin issue, and they tried all the different pharmaceuticals. Nothing was working. And then he had heard like organ meats might help. But the daughter was too young to give them actual organ meats. So they sprinkled Pluck on her food and totally went away. You know what I mean? So it's like,
so awesome.
You just never know. Like Mother Nature is a beautiful thing. It's just like we have to use it, like when we slaughter these animals, people talk about humanity and whatnot. It's like, okay, is slaughtering an animal inhumane? Well, it is when it's connected to our system. Like our system of slaughter, we only use about 50% of that animal.
Yeah. What a
The
waste.
other 50% gets totally trashed sometimes. There's some slaughterhouses that utilize them, but most just trash it. And yet, isn't it ironic that we're still nutrient deficient? And so what's happening? We're then turning around and spending our hard-earned money on supplements. And I'm just like, we're already killing that animal. We're literally throwing out 50% of it. If we had just eaten that other 50%, you probably wouldn't need those supplements.
Yeah.
Yeah. You have, like, I feel empowered and excited to like eat more organ meats. So I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Like, and implement it more in our diets. And
and just remember to keep it frozen. Like, try to limit when you defrost it, right? You can grate it. We talked about liver, but you can grate any of them, right? And then the other thing is just remember that how you cook it is even more important than what you're cooking.
Yeah.
So if you don't like the taste of something, try it to cook it differently.
Yeah.
Try it raw. Try it this. Just try different things, because most likely, if you don't like it, it's because you're not cooking it properly, or you're cooking it in a way that's making it taste bad.
Okay.
Exactly how we were doing. Okay. Any parting thoughts, James? We've taken so much of your time, but we really appreciate talking with you.
You're good. I guess I would just add, you talked earlier about saying a prayer before you eat, and just kind of how your husband sometimes rushes through things, or he's had to unlearn how to rush through things. And I would just offer that, I think like anything you can do just to be more mindful. Like, we focus a lot on what we're eating, but the more we can actually focus on, like, what is your state when you're eating, Like, so if you're feeling hurried or stressed out, that's not a good time to eat.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to digest that food very well. So it's the same thing as peeing out your supplements. You're just gonna waste that food that you just cooked or bought. So the more that you can, have your fast-paced day, but then when you go to eat, just take a breath, say a prayer, do a little grace, put your fork down in between every bite. Like, just create these kind of systems or these habits to force you to slow down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And chew. And then make sure you're eating with people that you love or that excite you, so that you're not in this kind of depressed or like dark space when you're eating. And then, if you're eating with your family, like, just remember, like, every moment's a blessing, right? Because we can't control what happens next. And so it's like, it doesn't necessarily have to be about the food, but it could just be about enjoying each other's company. And treating that like that's just as precious as the food you're eating, And so it's like, I think when we're in that state of bliss, like, everything is better. Everything, not only the state of our mind, but just the state of our digestive process. It's just all better. And it's really that easy. I mean, like, I think that's why I wanted just to make sure to highlight that we focus so much on, like, am I eating good food or bad food or healthy food or unhealthy? It's like, I wish we would be talking more about what are we being mindful about what we're eating?
Yeah. Yeah. Totally agree.
Yeah, I love it.
James, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time to be with us.
Yeah.
Where can people find you and connect with you?
You can find Pluck at eatpluck.com. You can find us on Amazon as well.
Oh, good.
And then you can find us on socials at eatpluck. And then my personal is Chef James Berry.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for being here, for your time.
Thank you. Thanks for promoting and sharing the plucking word.
Yeah.
I love it.
And but most of all, just thank you for caring enough to, share your process, your journey. I think that's the other thing I would want to honor is that, we all have our journeys, and we may start out in one place and we might find ourselves in a new place. And it's not about beating yourself up for what you didn't know. It's about honoring what you do know now. So just honor to you both for your process and for sharing your health journey. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we will see you guys all next week on Under the Sun Podcast. Bye.
Thanks for being with us today. Follow us on Instagram at underthesun_podcast. We'd love to meet you.
Please help us out by subscribing on YouTube and leaving a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. We'll see you next time. Please remember this information is made available to you for informational and educational purposes only. It is in no way a substitute for medical advice.